Hi, I'm Tom Meitner, and thank you for considering talking with me about creating a 1-hour book. But I wanted to give you some context before booking a call because a lot of times there are two big questions that everyone thinks about before considering having a conversation with me. One is whether or not they need a book to begin with, and the second is whether or not I can create that book for them. I put together this presentation so that you can see why a book is the most powerful tool that you can have in your marketing arsenal and different situations where I can help you get that book created. So why a book for your business? And I'm just going to highlight some of these numbers here. You can see a lot of the things in bold, and you can pause this if you want to read it. But in 2024, last year, nearly half of all B2B businesses, a full 45%, reported that generating a sufficient quantity of leads was the most significant marketing challenge. Lead generation is the biggest expense that every business is paying for right now. And the problem is 80% of new leads generated by marketing efforts never convert into sales. Now think about that for a second. You're going to spend all this money generating new leads, and 80% of them aren't going to buy from you anyway. So the reason why is because inadequate nurturing. You can see right here, 79% of marketing leads failing to convert for this reason. So of the 80% that aren't buying, 79% are just not buying because they're not nurtured properly enough. So we're talking about something deeper than just strategy. This is a crisis of trust because today everyone has unlimited access to information, and so they are doing their own research on you. They are digging in and trying to figure out whether or not you can help them. They're already forming opinions about you before they even talk to you. And so they're already vetting you without you being able to be there to be a part of the conversation. A book gives you the opportunity to change that dynamic a little bit. Looking at research from marketing consultancies, publishing a book is the single most credible marketing method available to service providers. It can increase your credibility factor by as much as 300%. Now, if we're talking about a crisis of trust, a 300% increase in credibility is going to have a big effect on whether or not your lead trusts you. So that's a good thing. Businesses with the best lead nurturing strategies generate 50% more qualified leads at a 33% lower cost. You're saving money and getting better leads. Goes back to this problem before. You're spending most of your money on lead generation and 80% aren't converting because they're lower quality. You're going to increase your sales qualified leads by 50%. And a book is the most powerful lead nurturing asset you can have. And the reason why is because it's efficient. It collapses the initial stages of a sales funnel. Awareness, interest, and consideration collapses them all into one highly efficient step. You're able to give them a book, the book does all the work, and you start that conversation at the decision-making stage. Very powerful. And just a few more statistics here. Entrepreneurial authors, so that's authors who are publishing books in support of their businesses, have found that 86% have grown their businesses since publishing their books, and 34% doubled their earnings. That is very powerful. That means the book is doing what it needs to be doing and doing it very efficiently and very effectively. Now, you could publish a book yourself, but why work with somebody like me? Authors that develop a clear and strong revenue strategy from their book from the outset had a gross profit of $96,000. That's 8.5 times the median profit of the average business book author. So the average author who is just publishing a book so they have one and hoping that they're going to get more business, they make $11,000. But if you have a clear strategy, that means your book is engineered to be a part of a marketing strategy and a funnel. Median gross profit, $96,000. That's a huge jump. And that speaks to having an expert strategy in place. And working with a ghostwriter versus not working with a ghostwriter, actually making that investment makes your book 4 times as profitable. So professional collaboration is key. You're going to save a lot of time. You're going to make a lot of money. But that tells you that a book is good for you, but that doesn't tell you whether or not I'm good for you. So I want to walk you through a handful of case studies of clients that worked with me and the different situations they were in. All of these are very different situations. One of them may speak closer to you and what you have in your current scenario and how I can help you. They're very different, and I'm really looking forward to telling these stories. Number one, we're going to talk about David Spence. David and I wrote The Tax Pro's Guide to Using LERPs for Advanced Tax Planning, Life Insurance Retirement Plans, and the Risk of Higher Future Tax Rates. A really heavy topic. And this is a very interesting one for me because it's complicated, but it also was done purely from recorded material. Normally, in a typical situation, we're going to have an interview of an hour or two. In this case, we never had an interview. What David did instead was he came to me and said, I'm really busy, but I have a lot of podcast interviews. I have webinars and trainings that I've done. I have all of that recorded. Can we use that? And I said, absolutely we can. In fact, that makes the job a lot easier. I didn't tell him to break it down or clip it or anything. I said, send me everything you have in bulk and I will take care of it from there. He even took a vacation during this time too. I didn't screenshot that, but he took a vacation with his family while I did all the work for him. This was another funny thing when we talk about edits. The editing process for books working with me is very flexible. It can work. You can work with line edits if you want to go into Google Docs yourself and make line edits. You can make suggestions, you can make notes, or you can do what David did. Dave came to me after seeing the first draft of the book and he said, I love the first half and I hate the second half. How can we make the second half more like the first half? And that's all he needed to do. We had a little bit of conversation on what he meant by that, but then I just went back to work and said, okay, I'll take care of it. It was just a couple of emails and I was able to edit the second half of the book like that, and it was done and he was happy. And he actually sent his book around to colleagues to get some early reviews before he hit publish. And you can see here, this is a professional speaker and author and economist who said this book was a masterful job and should be required reading for every advisor. This was targeting financial advisors. This was the former U.S. comptroller who said what the book is about, and that was definitely worth a read. So this book turned out incredibly well, and it was 131 pages cover to cover with just recorded material that he sent to me. Chad is another great one. I love this story a lot, actually. Chad was very interested in a book, but he was a little worried about the timing. And the reason why was because he had a live event at the end of May, and we were talking in April, and he said, I don't know if we can do this. And you can see this in his message to me. This was after our discovery call. He really wanted to do it, but it was just a matter of whether or not he wanted to get it done before his conference because he wanted printed copies in hand. Printed copies can take about 10 days to get printed and bound and sent to you. And I wanted to make sure that it was in his hands. And we were talking in April, and I said, that's no problem. We can do this in 2 to 3 weeks. So April 11th is when we agreed, right? That was a Friday. We did not get started right away. And the reason is because on April 15th, my wife and I had a baby. So I was out of commission for the week. That's not something that will happen in the future. So you don't have to worry about that interrupting your book writing process. But it did cause a little bit of a delay. We happened to get started that following week, which was April 22nd. And you can see on May 5th, after a few rounds of edits, we were done with the draft. He just had to add a bio at the end. So if you look at the dates here, April 22nd was our interview. Less than 2 weeks later, the book was finished. That is drafts with a couple of edits on top of it. And you can see the book right here. This was the cover that he wanted. It can be done. If you have a short timeline, it can be done. If you don't want to be bogged down in a process for months at a time, and who does, we can turn this around very quickly. Now, in this particular case, getting it done in less than 2 weeks, is this typical? No. And the only reason it's not typical is because I find that clients get busy and they don't have the time to turn around edits that quickly. If they are, I'm happy to work with them on that. But I work at your pace. So if you want to push it and get it done, we'll get it done. Jennifer is another great one. One of my more recent clients. Jennifer and I wrote The Obvious Truth About Money. And it was a great conversation. We had almost a 2-hour interview call. And then I knocked it out. And check this out. When she read it, after she went through the whole book, she also went on vacation during this time. She said, I love it. Thank you, in all capital letters. I didn't realize I have that many stories. You really did listen and make everything sound good. That is a huge one also, because a lot of times people think that they don't have stories. They're not worth writing a book about. That's my job. My job is to make you interesting. without adding anything. I'm able to position your stories and your words effectively. These are your words, not mine. And then after we finished it up and got the cover and everything going, she said, Tom, you've been so great. I have another book idea ready to go I want to work on. Carter is another one. Now, this was a cool one because Carter and I worked together on the Book of Long-Term Care. And I believe actually the Book of Long-Term Care. And that is a book that fit in with a series that they already were doing. They had their own book designer, which was totally fine by me as far as cover goes. And they already had a clear plan for what they wanted to do with this book, meaning we worked together on an outline very briefly, but they had personal stories that were the benchmark of this, of the foundation, what they told. But also you're working with technical stuff, technical advice and financial advice, and breaking all of that down. So we mixed those two things together and we fit this book in with their series that was already existing. My job is to write the book that you want and you need, not to make you publish a book that I want you to publish. You're in charge of this whole process. And at the end, as you can see, this was check-in with them. They went with a similar cover and said, we'll most likely do another project with you in the future. So they were happy with it. And then finally, we'll look at Jordan Wise here. Jordan Wise, he wanted to do a more broad topic. Now, I always advise people to go with more specific topics, more specific problems. And in Jordan's case, he wanted to go very broad and talk about financial resilience in every stage of your life. And so you can see we did a 100-page book that went through your financial life from post-college all the way through estate planning and retirement. It was a great book. It was a lot of fun to do, and it was deep in all of these different areas. In this case, he gave me a lot of broad information and tasked me with condensing it and giving it his spin. And he loved it. And not only that, and I liked this testimonial too, because he just said, this has been a lot of fun, which ultimately, at the end of the day, I like to do. All right. I don't want this to be a stuffy slog of a process. I know way too many people who have described book writing as a slog. My job is to make it, maybe it's not always going to be fun, but at least make it light, make it enjoyable, and make it within your wheelhouse. Okay. That's really important to me. We're working within your strengths and crafting this process around that. So if you are interested in speaking with me further about how this process could fit into your schedule, fit on your timetable, fit within your skill set, and accomplish your goals, whether you have existing books like Carter and you want another one to add to the series, or you have new books that you want to create, we can talk. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can click the link in the description below to go to the page where you can book a call. If you're on the booking call page, you can just scroll down and pick a spot on my calendar, and let's talk about putting your book together. And you can be the next one to report that you've doubled your earnings. And you can be the next one to say that your leads have been qualified by 50% more. Let's work together and make that a reality for you. Thanks for watching.